Hello, everyone. How you guys doing? Good. I decided to wear my orange pants to go with the color theme of the event here. So delighted to see all of you here. What a great morning we've been having. Some really interesting conversations. I don't know if Ernesto's still here, but I really love the rewarding failures conversation, because it's one of the things that I'm a big fan of. It's like, let's try to make the mistakes as a community so that we don't all have to do it individually. But I'm really excited that we have Kristin Groos Richmond here. Chris, as I know her, she is the co-founder and CEO of Revolution Foods, which she's going to tell you all about. But they provide really healthy, nutritious, and good tasting meals for kids in school. And Chris has been the CEO since the founding. It's a 13-year-old shared value native company. And Chris and I have not seen each other for 7 years. We sat on the White House Council for Community Solutions under the Obama administration together. And 2012 was the last time we saw each other when we delivered the goods to President Obama. We haven't seen each other since then. So I'm super delighted that she's here to share her story with all of you. We're going to talk a little bit about her motivations for starting her company. She's going to tell us a little bit about what it's like to navigate government-funded programs and some of the nutrition challenges that are facing our young people in this country in particular. So I hope you will be as inspired as I always am when I'm with Chris. One thing I will say is that she is a shared value soldier, because she had a board meeting last night, got on a red eye, landed here this morning, and just did a little zhuzhing up before she came out here. And I just said, you are a trooper. She did not cancel because she had a board meeting that was not originally scheduled to get scheduled for yesterday. So
no problem.
So thank you, Chris, for being here. All right.
Very happy to be here.
I'm going to ask her. It's less than 30 minutes that we have. So I'm going to ask Chris a few questions, and I'm going to throw it out to you guys. So please be eager in asking your questions. But the first one has to do with the fact that, in the the original Creating Shared Value paper that Professor Porter and Mark Kramer wrote, they referenced Revolution Foods. And in that story, it was a little sidebar, they talked about Revolution Foods being this really innovative new shared value company that was delivering about 6,000 meals a day, I think it was.
That's right.
And now she's delivering 2 million meals a week to over 2,500 schools and community locations. Yep. So Chris, what motivated you to start this company? And did you ever think about starting it as a nonprofit or some other business model other than a shared value model?
Thank you, Bobbi. So what motivated me to start the company, and I have a co-founder, Kristin, and we still work together, is very simple. We were both in education and saw firsthand the lever that nutrition plays in setting students up for success. And we had seen the flip side of that, teaching in schools, helping build schools where there was not a reliable source of nutrition, both in my case in Kenya and in Kier's case in the US. And so when you're in the classroom, when you're teaching, when you're working with students, which I know so many of you have in different capacities, or your own children, I'm a mom now, you see really quickly what a healthy mind and body contributes to engagement, focus, academic success, success in and out of the classroom. It's not just about the classroom. It's really how do we best set our students up for success. And when I personally came back to the US and went to business school, I had this hypothesis that this probably isn't just an issue overseas. I talked to principals, I talked to teachers, I talked to parents, and most importantly, I talked to students, and found that there were so many educators out there who said, I'm just not doing well enough by my students. And I sort of teach them one thing in the classroom about how important it is to be healthy and to eat healthy and think about the impacts of nutrition, both today and on kind of future outcomes. But then I marched them down to a lunchroom with a lot of junk food. And this was 14, 15 years ago. But we knew we could do better. You know, we knew we could do better. And I think I very much appreciated Ernesto's be humble, be open. What is the most creative way to fail? I think sometimes when you're a young entrepreneur, you know, anything's possible. And we were looking at the space and saying, gosh, this is a huge industry, later quantified as about a $20 billion industry. And we did not find a company that was actually focused on quality for students, and particularly students in the most underserved communities. So long answer, but that's what inspired us to start. Business opportunity, but really importantly, an opportunity to set students up for success and create access that just wasn't there at the time.
And you did this while you were in business school?
We did.
So was it a class assignment, or?
It was not a class assignment, but it became a multiple class assignment. We used, as many of you probably have experienced in school, you know, we used everything at our disposal, from marketing resources to pricing resources to strategy or startagy resources to you know, new venture finance. So we really kind of pulled together every resource we could. We were actually at Berkeley and used it to write a business plan, and then brought our first partners online. And as Bobbi said, today we're, you know, serving over 2 million healthy meals per week. So it's been a fast growth curve.
And when you started this, did people embrace you with open arms, or did you struggle? I mean, what was it like?
Yeah.
Was it just a straight line up, or?
Yeah. Well, school partners did embrace us with open arms because they were so desperate for this solution at the time. So there was just a ton of demand, and frankly, you know, having parents stand by your side and advocate for the company you're creating is one of the greatest motivators in the world. I would say the challenges were more on the fundamental company building aspects. You know, there was no clean label, what we call no artificial anything supply chain for K-12, and again, particularly for communities that had the least access to healthy food. There just wasn't a model for it. So lots of support from the community, lots of challenges in the company building.
You told me a story when we talked on the phone a couple of weeks ago about a sweet potato experience you had with a young person who never had experienced that before. Would you share that?
Oh, butternut squash.
Oh, butternut
yes.
squash. Okay, sorry,
Close.
wrong vegetable.
No, but that was it was just an interesting experience, and it has happened multiple times over. But in introducing new foods, because we both try to focus, of course, on healthy ingredients, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, a lot of variety. We also try to focus on culturally relevant menu design, which I'll talk more about. But this was an instance where we were introducing a new item to students, and they had never seen it before. And they tasted it. They're like a little bit cautious, a little bit skeptical. Tasted it. I will never forget it. It was in LA at a cooking event that we did. And then the young lady who tasted it with me came back the following week and said, I took my mom to the farmer's market and we bought butternut squash. And so she was taking that back to her family, which was incredibly exciting to see.
Yeah, so it's great to see that you're able to expose young people to maybe foods that they weren't necessarily see in their home situation or in their communities, and introducing them to healthy, nutritious, and probably more affordable food items.
Critical that it's affordable. Critical. So
one of the things, I'm going to go into a different area that we talk a lot about in the shared value community is data and getting results. You know, the business side, you know, there are more built-in mechanisms to capture, you know, the business outcomes. The social outcomes are a little sometimes more mysterious and harder to capture. What are you doing on that front, on both the business and on the social side?
Yeah, so I'll start with the social side, but I think what's really been amazing about building our model is it really is all integrated in terms of every meal that we're designing, producing, and distributing is contributing to a healthy, sustainable financial business, and it's sort of designed in the construct of our values. So for us, it's obviously looking at our supply chain and making sure that every ingredient that we use in our food meets our very strict no artificial anything standards. It's looking at what we would call we now call Project Crave, which is student-reported satisfaction around the menus we're serving. So again, now I speak both as a CEO and as a mom. You have to find that intersection of healthy but also loved, right? And it's hard to always hit the mark with food. You're gonna hit it and you're not gonna hit it. And so you have to be very responsive to what you're hearing, because if that food's not eaten, it's not having the impact that you want it to have. We've worked with Nutrition Policy Institute, UC Berkeley, Public Health, and now Kellogg Foundation they have separately run third-party studies over long periods of time on the academic outcome impact of the Revolution Foods platform. That's something that, again, we are not equipped to do. We're not a research institution, and in some ways that would be a conflict for us to run our own study. So they have actually published data now around improved academic outcomes when students are exposed to and eat a nutrition program like Revolution Foods. So those are some of the biggies. And then I will say we really think hard about job creation. We have been honored by organizations like Initiative for a Competitive Inner City, who many of you know well, ICIC, for being one of the fastest growing inner city job creators in the US. I like to say we don't just look at job creation, we also look at career creation. So when I think about people, like I'm thinking in my head, a gentleman by the name of Mauricio in our Oakland facility, our San Lorenzo facility, who has been promoted, started as an entry-level dishwasher, has been promoted probably 20 times in the last 10 years and is now managing a huge team of people. So we think about career creation, again, hiring the parents, hiring the grandparents, hiring the aunts, hiring the uncles of the students we serve, like hiring from the school communities we serve. So those are some of the ways we look at impact.
And you also, talking about engaging the community and moving out from the students.
Yes.
You do that with your menus as well, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll just use Boston as an example. When we came to Boston, there was a particular focus of the superintendent at the time on designing menus to the community of Mattapan. And so one of the reasons that BPS was excited to work with us is because we're really a product design company. I mean, we go out and we really talk to our consumers, which is our kids and our families. And we use, as I said, a Project Crave rubric, which is our rubric of designing meals, testing meals, and then going back and iterating and reformulating meals where they may not be hitting the mark, to design to specific communities, so that, again, we have not just healthy food, but food that is delicious and loved and culturally relevant. And a lot of times, like I was in a school last week with the PTA, we were talking about, okay, what's working and what's not working, and we learn as much as they learn from us. It's a two-way street. We come back with menus and menu ideas from the communities we serve that end up being kind of our greatest hits. So
that's terrific. So talk a little bit about the business side, and how do you engage with investors, and talk a little bit about your financing structure, just so folks can understand, because most of the folks in this room work in corporations, and we, they also have to talk to investors, but just as from where you are, be interesting to hear that perspective.
Okay, well, you had asked me earlier and I didn't answer, did we ever think about different business structures? Yeah. So I'll just quickly kick off with that. We decided early on we wanted to be a for-profit, and the reason for that is we sincerely believed that there was a great opportunity here to create a valuable, sustainable business while having an impact. We also wanted to scale. I mean, our model was about serving millions of students. We wanted to have an impact on changing the overall food system. Sounds very ambitious, and we're a $160 million company now, so we're just getting started. But we do see the impact of the Revolution Foods platform in terms of how it's, I would say, kind of taking away excuses and saying this can be done for every community in terms of getting students and families the quality they deserve. On the business model, it is critical. So before I was an educator, I was on Wall Street. I was an investment banker. And I think what I took away from that and what's been valuable about starting in corporate America, in my case, is knowing how important it is to create the right assumptions when you are talking to investors. So you're building a model that reflects the values that you want to deliver to the community that then reflects the overall financial trajectory of the company. So what I mean by that is when we built our original model, we built in the food cost of all natural food. And we built in our job creation strategy. We made sure that that initial financial model reflected the cost, to the best of an entrepreneur's ability. You never know exactly what's going to happen, but the cost of the food, the cost of the labor, the cost of the initiatives that we wanted to, the cost of customer engagement, in our case with schools around nutrition education and menu design. So when you go to investors with a model that reflects those values, I'll be honest, you get a lot of no's sometimes because people say this isn't as quick of a turn on ROI as I'd like to see. I'm used to seeing, sort of a fast model where I'm in and out in 5 years. That's not Revolution Foods. That's okay. You're going to attract certain investors who ultimately are aligned with your mission, your time frame, your financial return model, but that dynamic is incredibly important. And what's happened as a result of that is we've brought on an amazing group of investors who are aligned to the ultimate goal of building a very valuable and very impactful company over the time frame that it's taking to do that. And that investor group ranges from Prudential and Nuveen and Citibank to Revolution Growth and Oak Investment Partners. So it's quite broad. We also have foundations who've invested in us through their equity investment arms. So it's quite a diverse cap table. But what those investors have in common is being behind the mission, the model, the systems change, and the ultimate belief that it's creating great financial value as well, because it's disrupting a big sort of antiquated space in the market.
So you really went in as a purpose-driven, shared value model and said, this is what we're offering.
100%.
And if you're not bought in, don't invest.
100%, because if it doesn't align, it lets everyone down, right?
Yeah.
And for us, humbly, we felt like the mission and the change that we wanted to drive was too important to kind of roll the dice and misinform people of what we were doing.
Yes. So would you do anything differently, looking back at the last 13 years?
So many things.
Pick one thing to share with the audience, and then I'm going to turn it over to you guys to ask questions.
I'm looking at some of my amazing teammates out in the audience. I think when you're an entrepreneur, so Ernesto brought this up, but one of the wonderful things about running a mission-driven company is you absolutely punch above your weight when it comes to talent. So I've been able to talk to, attract, and recruit, levels of people who I am just constantly humbled that they work with Revolution Foods because they could be doing anything. And they come to Rev Foods because they believe in the systems change that we're driving, and they're really interested in company building. Not for the faint of heart, as many of you know. But I would have hired more quickly in terms of building out the team that I needed. I think one of the kind of critical fails, again, of younger first-time entrepreneur CEOs is you tend to want to do everything yourself and kind of, tackle this, tackle that, tackle this, tackle that. Very quickly you learn that, the power and success of your company is 100% the strength of your team. And so you quickly move to drive results and impact through your team. And I think shortening that curve as much as entrepreneurs can do is a key piece of advice.
Great. That is great.
I could do 20 more, but I'll save us.
All right. Well, if we could turn the lights up and question. Okay, there's a question right here.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm Rita German with John Hancock. So when you started out, it's safe to say you guys were kind of, no pun intended, revolutionary in the segment of food insecurity and nutritious foods. And I think since that time, you've seen the discourse come around to kind of where you were a while ago. And so how do you think about market share now that you see other companies or other institutions attacking the issue in the same way, especially vis-a-vis kind of the nonprofit sectors that are also trying
Yeah.
to have systemic impact around access to healthy
Yeah.
food?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I believe, again, looking back at that kind of $20 billion opportunity, this is a huge opportunity to impact families across the US. So I don't think there's a scarcity mentality around that. In fact, again, back to something that Ernesto said, it's a way of kind of getting out of the space that you may have started originally and like, we do this way, and saying, oh, how can we be the product provider into the nonprofit who wants to have local impact, right? It's sort of thinking about how the business evolves, which actually, in some cases, might be a more sustainable long-term model. So to me, it's a lot about partnership. It's also about expanding your impact into adjacencies. So where the school K-12 space, I would agree with you, has a lot of activity and discourse around how important healthy food is. You know, we have recently started serving the after-school supper space. This is a space where, you know, I'm from San Antonio, Texas, and to give you a shocking statistic, out of the eligible funding in the state of Texas, which is a huge state for needy, high needs, after-school high-risk youth programs, only 2% of the eligible funding is used to give kids healthy dinners so that we know they're going home with a supper in their bellies. So you look at that kind of an opportunity and you say, wow, how do we have more impact using our core capabilities, which in this case is product design and supply chain and fresh food manufacturing. You know, we've recently had a lot of folks, we meet with mayor's offices quite often, and we've had a lot of folks say to us, gosh, we've got this huge aging population in the US. How come we're not putting the same focus on, you know, healthy, respectful food for our homebound elders, for instance? So you look at, I think the bigger you get and the more the market kind of opens and changes, we look at our core capabilities and what we're good at and think about how can we have the most impact on what I call citywide wellness in a profitable, sustainable way.
It's really interesting, Chris, that there's a presentation this morning by Novartis and Gary Cohen yesterday for BD, and you saw their 100-year history, and someday someone's going to be giving your 100-year history.
Can't
and
wait.
to see how you've evolved your company. Another question out there. I need to put my glasses on so I can see.
Hi. Wondering what the metrics of success look like from the school's perspective, as well as what types of school districts are attracted to this type of healthy school lunches.
Yeah, so it depends on the district. I mean, some of the districts that are kind of furthest up the curve on this type of thinking, they're looking at, well, first of all, I would say humbly working with many districts, charter schools, city agencies, after-school programs around the country, I don't think there's a person around who doesn't care about this issue, and it's more about the education around it's possible to do this in an affordable way. And I think the people who are kind of higher up the curve and having thought about this for 5, 10 years, they're looking at things like student satisfaction, 100%, everyone's looking at that. They're looking at things like sustainable supply chain and waste. They're looking at things like labor standards. They're looking at doing 3 healthy meals a day instead of 1. So one of the things that we try to do is create almost a roadmap for our partners to say, here's where you are today, here's what sort of best in class looks like in terms of the most impact you can have on students. And then also just from a product and platform standpoint, kind of mixing it up and making sure you have multiple formats to keep people excited, to keep students excited and eating every day, from your menu variety to how the food is served. Maybe some of it is individually packaged, maybe some of it is family style, where you can do that so you're reducing waste and kind of changing the eating experience. And I do think, I believe looking at the academic outcomes and the impact that investing in great nutrition has, both now and in the future, is of interest to everybody.
Can't see with the light. Any other questions out there?
There's a question.
Hello, thank you so much for all of your work. One of the tasks that I had as medical director for the Department of Public Health for the state of Massachusetts was to bring to fruition healthy standards for school foods. And I have to share with you that there were times when I thought that I might not make it out of that process alive.
Yeah.
It was the only time during my state service where I got visceral hate mail, complete with expletives about, because people were upset around the standards that we were putting in place, which were around health. And so I'm just curious, how have you negotiated some of that surprising level of just deep, I don't even know what to say. I mean, it's just surprising level of sort of deep resentment that anyone would want to improve school food or change it in any way, or so I'm wondering how you approach that.
Thank you for sharing that. This is it's a tough area, and I appreciate that you have dealt with it directly in your job. I think how we approach it comes from a few different levels. So one is just being very pragmatic and saying, okay, if we're able to provide healthier food that doesn't go in the wastebasket and that is consumed, here's the impact that it's having on kids. So really focusing on the fact that it's not just healthy, but it's also delicious and it's craved. And here are the participation results. Here's what happens when you enact breakfast in the classroom, or here's what happens when you enact a healthy supper program in terms of the consumption, which means that you have to have the right menu variety and you have to do the right student design. So I think opening up that conversation has helped a great deal. I also think empowering communities helps so much. And what I mean by that is when we first started, it was amazing how many communities just assumed, well, I have to pick the cheapest option because that's the state of affairs and procurement. And actually, and I went to DC to have this discussion with many, many people when Secretary Vilsack was in office, and there's nothing that says that, right? Everything says this is sort of a situation where there's a lowest responsible bid scenario so that communities are empowered to choose a partner, whether that's Revolution Foods or someone else, who can fulfill on the needs of that community. So empowering communities and parents to speak for themselves and say, no, I think we deserve better when it comes to quality and when it comes to parent engagement and when it comes to education and when it comes to operations, whatever it might be. Having that family and parent voice helps so, so much. So those are two ways we've addressed it, and mostly my theory is just showing results by track record and coming back and saying, here's what we've accomplished. So it's hard to argue with the data when you have it. But thanks for the question. It's an ongoing thing that we think about and strategize around.
Well, that 30 minutes went by quickly, and I just want to congratulate you building a $160 million shared value company, starting with a couple of schools and now in 2,500 locations and delivering 2 million meals a week. And it sounds like more ideas coming to help your company grow and deliver shared value. So everyone, please give a round of applause to Chris.